Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with this. So this is going to be our second Google Hangout. Again, my name is Jamal at Columbia. Some of you probably know me as your advisor. Some of you probably know me from the other Google Hangout that we did. But anyway, last week we talked about how to start a mix. Today we're going to talk a little bit about how to go ahead and do some audio edits. We're going to be looking at drums for the most part. I was going to talk a little bit about some vocals and some other stuff, but I think that drums, it's going to be sufficient to show you guys what I'm talking about, and it's going to take up a good amount of time. So that's what we're going to focus on. I got a Pro Tools session ready to go. It's a drum session recorded over at ES Audio this past July. Shout out to Donnie Brick and all those guys over there. Really great drum sound, great drum sounding room. So let me go ahead and switch the screens and we'll go ahead and look at what's going on here. Okay, so you guys should be looking at my drum session here. So what I have so far, this is the backbone of a song that's being worked on. It should be released next year, sometime early next year. We just did some drum tracks. I have a guitar scratch track in here, but that stuff's not really important. So we already have all our drum takes going and whatnot. So what we really want to do is, choose the best stuff. We're gonna make some comp tracks here. So the view I have open right now is the playlist view. So if we go to our view options here, we can switch it back to waveform. This might be the view that most of you guys are familiar with from opening up Pro Tools from the start. I'll go ahead and extend this a little bit. Might look a little bit like this. This might be a little bit more familiar to you. And I'm going to turn a few things off here before we get started. I'm going to turn off this elastic audio because I want to introduce you guys to that. I want to start off with that on. So I did do the engineering on this session. So I was in the room, I was talking with the drummer. And for the most part, good take. Had the guy come in there and play the stuff down. He knew the song. We worked on that stuff. But he came to it kind of cold. So for the most part, it's not a bad performance. I pushed him as much as he could go, as long as we had in that room anyway. But there's a few things I do want to clear up. Nobody's perfect. So right off the bat, listening to this song, getting ready to mix or getting ready to edit it, I found my spots. But for this session here, I don't have any of those marks in there. So it's kind of just clean. This is the punching for the last take that we're doing here. You can see up at the top, I do have some markers, just pre-chorus, chorus, verse. And these don't really have any bearing on what we're doing today. These are primarily for when we were in session, just to kind of show us where things were, because the song starts off with guitar and other instruments and vocals and whatnot. The drums come in a little bit later on, so we just want to have those markers there so we can be sure where everything was what's going on. So I'm going to just go ahead and click and drag these down because we don't really need these today. So a good way to delete your markers there. And of course, as I always say to everybody, this is all about using your ears. So before you even start doing anything, you really want to be listening to this track and see what's going on, see what stuff you're going to change, because even though you can see that there's clear punch-ins here, we don't really know what's going on with the audio. We want to be able to really say for sure what we're going to edit. So we're just going to listen to a little bit of it, not going to listen to the whole thing. It's a long song, even without the guitar and the bass and all that stuff. So this is just the pre-chorus, first pre-chorus. So we can already hear, even from the beginning of this, there was a little bit of shakiness. I think when I was doing the engineering here, this was the better take at the time, or at least there was something here that I wanted, so I used this as my base take, and I did end up replacing a lot of stuff. So we're going to talk about how to use a grid, how to not use a grid to make these edits, and of course using a little bit of elastic audio. So here we're in the chorus of the song. All right. So right off the bat, like I said, I know there's a few things in here that are a bit shaky, so I'm going to go ahead and address those things. Now, you might not want to do all your edits at one time, meaning you don't want to just listen to a song and be like, oh, okay, I need to stop, fix this spot. Sometimes you just want to listen through the whole thing, even if you've already heard it 1,000 times. So similar to what I did last time when I was talking about starting the mix, I'm going to use my markers to note spots so that I can go back and edit those later on, so that way I can just keep listening on. So I have a little shaky spot here, so I'm going to hit enter. I'm gonna bring up my memory location. I'm gonna do like a shaky start or something like that. That's gonna be my first marker there. So I can continue to listen on, and there's a few other things I noticed are a little bit weird. So I'll usually mark out like those little shaky spots. I'll mark out parts where I know I'm going to place a different take. You know, maybe that take is fine, but another take was better, so I mark that. And then also, of course, fills. I always go in and check the fills. A lot of times I will have the drummer just do some takes with those fills in them, especially if they're harder fills. So that way we can go back and get those in there nice and cleanly. And I think we did a little bit of that with this recording session. Now with these punch-ins, these are spots where I have the person play that again because something wasn't right about the performance. Now these are really obvious, well, I guess I shouldn't say that, not everybody knows you need to fade these in. So I would make a mark here if I need to. I mean, sometimes you can just see it, the regions of different color, you already can see that, these are two different takes, so we need to fade these. But for our purposes here, I'm going to go ahead and make a fade marker. It's called fade 1 or something like that. No big deal. So that's going to tell me that I do need to go ahead and go back and fade that. So any place where you're seeing these chops here, if you're not doing the recording session, you're just getting this audio, you just got the session, any place you see these chops, you need to go back and check these and make sure that everything is nice and clean, or add a fade on there to be sure that everything is nice and clean, because it's really obvious if you play some audio and it's a spliced take, those transients aren't going to line up exactly, so you're going to hear that nasty clip sound that nobody wants to hear on the record, and you don't want to ever deliver anything like that to somebody, especially if you're in the apprentice stage where you're trying to impress somebody. You don't give them dirty material. So, I would make a mark. Oh yeah, fade this here. Fade 2, something like that, something nice and simple, right? I'd go on for all of this stuff. So let me go ahead and switch over to my view modes here. I'm going to go back into playlist mode. So if you want to get to playlist mode, you can click on the track view, which is by default waveform. We go into playlist mode. So what this will do is it will display all of our takes here. So when you're recording, you can obviously have multiple takes. Instead of making multiple tracks to redo a take, you just click this little arrow here next to track title. You can see I have a bunch of different takes there, and you click new or duplicate if you want to duplicate a take. So you can see all these things here. You can see all these different takes, so I have to choose from. Now, one thing that you might want to consider when you are doing these drum edits or doing any kind of edits is making a blank take. Something like this. When you make a new take in Pro Tools, it will go ahead and drop all the other takes under that. And another little cool thing here, I'm going to go to the grab tool real quick and show you something. If you grab a region and you just drag it down, this little blank space here, that will create a new take for you. So really handy when you're doing this stuff. But the reason you have a blank take is it's kind of like being able to create a new clean comp track. So if I want to, say I want to leave all this stuff here, I want to leave this untouched for one reason or another, I can do my option drag or alt drag, depending on the system you're using. Drag this up here. Now I'm adding stuff to my new blank take. So now once I start to make my collage, that's going to turn into my comp. I don't have to worry about, messing anything up here and having to undo my steps or, use my trim tool to drag stuff out. I just have a nice clean spot here. So the first thing we're going to look at is how to go ahead and replace some audio. So I'm going to make a few moves that are a little bit arbitrary, just for the sake of time. I'm not going to go through and scrutinize this as closely as I normally would. But let's say, for example, I have this spot here, measure 51. Not again, but just to mention, I'm using a click track. We use a click track. We were to the grid on this session, but we will talk about how to do this if you don't have a click track on the session. But anyway, so I have this spot here, measure 51. So I have a chop here, so I know if something was wrong, I had the player play it in. Maybe that's not the take I want, though. Maybe I do want to go back down to my other takes and pull something else that might be a little bit better. So in order to audition takes in Pro Tools, instead of having to go here to this arrow and click the take, if you have playlist view up, what you can do is you can go ahead and hit the solo button. on the take. So what this will do is it won't solo just that track. It's going to solo that take. Everything else is still going to play. So let me pull up my group real quick. I'm going to turn off my my drum groups that I have on. Actually, let me turn those back on for 1 second. I'm going to unsolo this. All right. So now I'm going to hit solo. So notice here, I have that one take solo, not the track. And if I hit play, everything else is still playing, but I'm soloing that drum take. So if I switch, you can hear that these are different takes. Now we'll get into this in a little bit, but when you're doing drum edits, when you're doing anything that has multiple mics and it's picking up a bunch of different sounds in one room, you gotta make sure things are phase coherent. And so you have to do all of your edits together. So it was really, really, really important that I had a drum group going right off the bat. So all my drums are linked up to each other. So now I can move them all uniformly. Because if you don't do that, your music is going to sound really, really wonky, and everything's just—it's not going to work. It's not going to happen. You'd have to spend all the time in the world trying to get all those transients lined up again, and even still, it won't work out the way you want it to because the characteristics of what was going on at the time. So let me demonstrate that again. So I'm playing. Let's take the drum group off. So I'm going to play for my main take here. This main take, and I'm going to go ahead and use the kick 0.01 take, and you can hear that there's some flamming and a little bit of phase going on now. So we don't want that. So I'm going to turn on my drum group, and now I'm going to replace it with this. I'm going to replace my main take with kick 0.01 with everything moving at the same rate. Everything getting chopped at the same rate. We'll go over to measure 51. And I'm going to go ahead and split that. And let's say measure 52. Maybe it's just a 1 bar edit that we're making here. Now, one thing that I want to point out to you guys right off the bat here before I even move anything. Notice that this kick drum hit is a little bit off compared to where the other ones are. That's okay. I chopped it right here, right on measure 51, even though my kick drum hit is back there, because it's easier to move things around if you move them around in nice, even chunks. I can go ahead and add that time into the grid if I want to, or I can tell it to, you go to 2 measures if I need to. And I can adjust later on using the trim tool to where I need to be, versus if I use the select tool, I'll undo this for a second, undo my chop. If I use the select tool in slip mode and try to do this, look at the time up here. That's so weird. I mean, why would you want to try to input that when it's so easy to just go ahead and use your grid, get a nice even spot, separate, and watch this. I'm going to use my option drag again because I don't want to take it away from this original take. I'm going to go ahead and add it to this take here. So now I got a nice even spot. And if I need to, again, go to my trim tool, I can go ahead and switch to slip mode, and I just drag it out to where it needs to be. So this is probably going to be a little bit early anyway, so I would probably want to use the take that was on that blue track and not the one from this purplish track here. But let's listen to it anyway. Oh, got it solo. Take that off. So you can hear that hit was a little bit early, and the characteristic of the performance is different. He was doing some different stuff with the hi-hat. So that's not the edit I want to use. So all I got to do is undo. And I'm back to normal. Totally fine. So let's see here. Let's go ahead. Let's move forward a little bit. Okay, so I'm noticing here, looks like right at measure 71, it's kind of a weak hit. So instead of replacing a big chunk, like a measure or, a whole section, In this instance, I just want to replace one hit. Now, it's good practice to have your drummer go ahead and play each drum individually somewhere at the end of the session or at the beginning of the session, wherever you want to put it, just in some blank space. So that way you have samples to pull from. Because again, remember, everything has to be phased, coherent. You can't, mix and match takes. Everything has to come from the same take when you're making your comp tracks, or else you're going to get that wonky phase. So I can't be like, all right, I'm going to take from the kick drum, take one, but my main track is, take four. Can't do that. In this case, we don't have any samples. So what I can do is I can go ahead and make some samples out of the stuff I already have. So I can find a nice clean spot, or close to clean spot, as possible with this mix. So I think this spot right here, this transient, that's pretty nice. So in this situation, I'm probably not going to use my grid mode. I have an easier option because I'm not worried about taking a big chunk. I am going to go ahead and take just this one spot. Just put the slip mode, and I turn on my tab to transient, one of my best friends here. So what I do is I click on the track in the spot, general spot, kind of close to where I am, hit tab, and boom, I'm right on top of that kick drum hit. Now this one is a little bit off here, so maybe I won't use that one because it looks like some of my other stuff's not lined up. Yeah, actually it's probably okay. So I'm going to go ahead and separate. So, B or Command E or whatever way you want to get to that. Separate. Pick a nice spot here. Separate again. Now I have a nice little sample available to me. So there's a few ways I can go about moving this sample to the spot I want. I can use spot mode, or I could, use my alts and drag and try to figure out the spot. But I want to be as accurate as possible. When you're replacing transients, you really want to know exactly where you are. So tab the transient is going to come in handy again for us. Tab the transient and slip mode. Now watch how I handle this. Oh, and just as a reminder too, to you guys, if you guys have questions, go up to the top right-hand corner of the page there. You should see the Chrome kind of like apps launcher logo thing, the big square with the 9 squares inside of it. Click on that and you're able to ask some questions. So anyway, back to this. So I'm going to find out exactly where this weak hit is. So it's not right on the grid. So I just want to go ahead and find out using my, my counter here where I am. So what I can do is I can go ahead and click a general spot again next to where I'm supposed to be. Hit tab one more time, tab the transient. And up here in my counter, I have the exact time of that hit. Now, if I was to switch this to minutes and seconds, say if I wasn't using the grid, say if we didn't have a click track on, if I switch this to minutes and seconds, it's going to tell me exactly in minutes and seconds where I am. So now I'm presented with another choice. I can go ahead and write this time down or try to remember it. Or what I can do is I can go over here to my selections and go to link timeline and edit selection. Turn this off. So look here at the big counter, and then I want you to look at the small on the right side. Notice that the big one is not moving, but my selections on the right side are moving. So by unlinking those, I now have the time where I was supposed to be right here for me. I don't have to write it down. I don't have to remember it or anything like that. It's right where I need to be, and I can go and move freely in my edit window without having to worry about losing track of that time. So now I'm going to take my sample. I know exactly where it needs to be. So I can use my grab tool and try to drag it exactly to that spot, or I can try to be as specific as possible. Now you have two options here. Spot mode, which is going to bring up the spot dialog anytime you try to move a piece of audio. So see if you guys can see this or not. You should see the spot dialog box there. That spot dialog box has a time that I can input here until my sample exactly where to go. So if I go 76 to 911, my audio now moves right to that spot. So it's a perfect replacement, or as perfect as possible. Now the problem with that is that I do have this blank spot here. So if I do that, I do need to go back and fix that somehow. So you can use the trim tool and do like that, just bring it back out there. Since it's from the same take, everything will come seamlessly. Now, of course, that edit that we added in there, we just have to go back and fade that. But that's, that's fine. That's the name of the game. That's what we're going to do. Another option we have here is to go ahead and right-click the region. If we right-click, we have the option of bringing up spot mode. So if we bring up spot mode, it's the same thing as using the spot grid mode there, except for it's just temporary. It's so we don't have to go back and forth between spot or slope and grid. It's just a one-time thing. So I can enter at the same time. It's going to work the same way. Everything's going to be totally fine. Just another way to go about doing it. So let me go ahead and find my spot again. So I'm going to link my timeline and edit selection one more time. Spot 762911. I'm going to unlink them. Get my grab tool. Grab my spot there. I'm going to go spot mode. 762911. And I got another perfect replacement there. So again, use a trim tool, pull back the audio I need to, and get that nice and tight. So next thing I'm going to do here, I got my replacement. I don't have to worry about this side because I know that this side is nice and seamless. It's coming from the same take. Maybe I want to make a mark there so I know I don't have to go back and check that. It's up to you. I'll do that for the sake of this tutorial. That one's okay, right? Don't need to fix. Oh, got the wrong spot. Just drag that over. So the next thing I'm going to do here, I'm going to listen to this and see how it's off. So it sounds like the simple hit is a bit different from the original take. So it looks like we have a little bit more work to do here than just adding in a fade and moving some stuff around. So one thing you can do with this trim tool, other than pulling stuff back, is extend things out. So maybe this spot's fine. Maybe this sample I use, maybe everything that came after that sample I wanted to take is fine. So maybe I can go ahead and extend this and use this as part of my new comp track. Let's go ahead and test it out. Okay, so up to that point, it doesn't really work out that well. So maybe if I extend it a little bit further, we'll just see. Let's try it out. So it's not really working out. Not really this best spot to choose from. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and choose something else a little bit closer on. We gotta find one that has the same symbol there. So I'm just listening now. Gotta be really crucial. That's why it's really important to really understand what's going on in the track, because you want to be able to notice the subtleties. Notice that the performance is a little bit different. So it sounds like I could try to use this one. It sounds like he's using the same crash spot. It might be a little bit risky though, because we have that snare hit that's still coming so close. So, let's go ahead and give it a try. Let's see if we can make that one work. So again, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and use our tab of transients so we get nice and close to that. And with our drum group on, everything is going to be linked up, so we're chopping everything uniformly. And I'm going to go ahead and just grab it maybe like right here, so right before that snare hit. So instead of using this kick drum track as my guide, because all my tracks are linked up, I can just go ahead and go down to the snare track, since that's the thing that I'm trying to eliminate from this anyway. So I can see exactly where that snare starts. So one thing you can try is you can do tab the transient here and create a boundary like that. Oops. Or if it's not that important to you, you can go right here, a little bit before, whatever works easiest for you. So I'm just going to go ahead and do tab and transient and get right on top of that snare. So now I got a new sample here. I'm going to go ahead and try replacing this at my spot. See if this one works. So 62911. See if that happens. So it's a little bit cleaner. Still got a little bit of a bounce there, right in the middle, like right where the two regions meet. So let's go ahead and try and see if I can extend the backside of this. Not bad, not bad. So I'm okay with that edit. I'm going to go ahead and add a fade in there. So like I talked about last week when we were talking about setting up the mix, the fade is going to be relative to how closely you're zoomed in. So if I'm zoomed out like this, little small fade there, that little small fade could actually be a bit too much. So you want to find that nice balance between being nice and tight and being far enough so that way you can make a nice accurate fade. And really you want to pay attention to being able to read these waveforms, like where they're peaking and whatnot. So I'm going to make a little spot right here. This is probably going to be fine. I'm going to check it. So that looks pretty small. That's okay. Command F to do fade. So we're going to get a crossfade here. Another option for fade going to be under edit. And fades, you can go create fade. And there we go. So now we can draw fades. We're not going to really talk too much about how to draw these fades and whatnot. Just want to show you some basic stuff there. These arrows here, these up and down arrows, will increase the waveform size by view, and won't increase the gain on them, just for us to be able to see this a little bit better. So crossfade. So we'll just use a really basic fade here. It's not really too tricky. Sounds like we got this nice and tight. There we go. So let's listen back. All right, so that fade is fine. We do need to go back and do our, put our Band-Aid back. So next thing I want to look at is maybe getting this fill nice and tight. Maybe I don't have another take of the fill. Maybe the fill was just fine, or maybe it just needed a little bit of tightening up. It wasn't a matter of re-recording. Maybe you're running out of time for your session, or maybe you didn't have the option. Maybe this is just what you were given if you're just the mix engineer or the editor here. I have at my disposal elastic audio inside of Pro Tools. So instead of having to go and chop pieces to recreate this fill, which you might be able to get away with that, and it could be a really cool effect if you're going for something a little bit choppy. But if I want something nice and smooth, I'm going to switch to elastic audio so I can just manipulate these waveforms here. I don't want to manipulate all the other stuff around it, right? So to enable elastic audio inside of Pro Tools, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to my track, and you have this time-based selector option. Now, your audio files are going to be based in samples. Your MIDI is going to be based in ticks, meaning it's going to be able to be manipulated by a grid. Now, you can switch your audio to ticks so that you have that same kind of flexibility as MIDI. You just go to this option here in the left-hand corner of the track. We're going to go to ticks. Now, you got to take this a step further here. So you get this nice, what's like a green triangle, green metronome here. You got to take this a step further. You got to go to the right of that, and you got to change it to the type of elastic audio you're going to use. Polyrhythmic, polyphonic, rhythmic, monophonic, or various speed. So just to explain these really quick. Polyphonic, meaning more than one note being played at a time. So if you're playing a chord is polyphonic. If you're trying to manipulate large chunks of audio, whether it be like a guitar part, or you're trying to chop a song in your time stretch a song, whatever it may be, polyphonic is probably the option you want to go with because there are going to be multiple notes played at one time. Rhythmic is for things that aren't necessarily pitched or pitched in the traditional sense of like a guitar or a piano or something like that. Drums, as you may or may not know, do have a pitch to them, but we don't think of them the same way. that's the option we're going to use here. Now, monophonic is for things that are doing one note at a time. So vocals, unless you're Layla Hathaway, you're probably not singing more than one note at a time, or unless you're some Tibetan monk. Bass lines, most of them are going to be monophonic, although you do get some bass chords. You got to be listening to that, and then very speed makes it so that when you change the speed or start changing the time, the pitch is going to be affected. So we're going to go to rhythmic here, because we're not worried about any guitars or anything like that at this time. We're just worried about our drums. And then I'm going to go ahead and switch my view mode again to warped audio. So notice everything gets nice and gray here for us, and we have these lines telling us where our transients are. So one thing you might want to consider here, and this goes back, keeping yourself organized, make some markers just so you know that I'm using this spot, because looking at all this can be kind of blinding. There's no color variation, everything just kind of gray. So you might lose track of where you are. You get up to go to the bathroom or something like that, and you all of a sudden don't know exactly where you are anymore for some reason, or somebody hits the mouse, whatever it may be. So I'm going to say field edit. And again, you can call these whatever you want to, just for our purposes today, I'm doing this. So I'm going to listen to it. So I'm going to say up to right here is where I want to stop that. Very nice. All right. So now that I'm in elastic audio, I'm going to zoom in nice and tight here. And again, this was recorded using click tracks. Everything's on the grid. Now, one thing to consider when you're using elastic audio and trying to move around transients or just trying to sequence audio files in general, if the stuff before it is out of time and you straighten out that one specific part, it's going to sound funky when you get to that part, because that one part is going to be in time and everything else is going to be kind of loose. So you kind of gotta be gentle with it. You gotta kind of know exactly where you're going for. So you don't want to make things too robotic if the performance is nice and loose. If you got a John Bonham kind of thing going on, don't go and make everything robotic in that one section. Get it right. You gotta kind of slide it off the grid a little bit, or you go ahead and quantize the stuff before it, wherever it may be. There's a bunch of different options, a bunch of different ways you can go about thinking about it. But for our purposes here, say this was a good take. Say we've already got all our stuff in order. We've got all of the comps before it ready. We want to use this, but we just want to get this fill nice and tight. So everything else before that is perfect to our standard for right now. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move these things around. I'm going to move them a little bit off the grid. So it's not so robotic, because I want to keep that natural feel there. So that's where your ears got to come in play. You gotta be a musician at this point. You gotta have a good sense of time, because these aren't arbitrary at all. You got to make sure that the feel is right. So I really got to listen to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make a work marker here. So when you're in elastic audio, you want to use the grab tool. And if you hit Command or Control on a PC, you do have the option of just creating one work marker. But if you hit Shift, you hold Shift, and you move your grab tool over a spot, and you click that spot, you click one of those lines there, it's going to go ahead and make a work marker before, on the spot you clicked, and after the spot you clicked. So this might be the option we want to use here. So we got to have these anchor points here in order to move this stuff around. So got my grab tool, got my anchor points. I'm going to move my grab tool to the middle of the line, not the bottom of the line anymore. And I can move it like so. See how it's stretching the audio? And for the most part, everything's going to be nice and okay. We're not going to hear too much of that time change. It's going to be so small, our ears aren't going to pick it up, especially with everything going in it. But you always want to check it. Always want to check if anything in a chance. So that one's okay. That's nice and fine for right now. So I'm going to go ahead and look and see where my next thing is. So I was focusing on the kick drum, but remember, we got all those other elements going on there. So, a good rule of thumb is to start with your kick and your snare, because those are usually in those foundational spots like 1, 3, 2, and 4. All the other stuff in the middle, like your hi-hat and whatnot, is kind of grooving. May have depending on the music or the style of the drummer, that hi-hat might have a little bit of wiggle room. But I want my kick drums, my snare, since they're on those strong beats, to kind of be in a nice spot. So I'm going to check my snare next before I go on to my next kick transient. And again, you know, listen to it before you start moving stuff around. I got my kick a little bit off, so I'm gonna make my snare a little bit off, maybe. Not bad, not bad. So I'm gonna go ahead and add another word marker. I'm gonna go ahead and go to my kick drum hit. My next kick drum hit, that is. So I'm gonna do my little trick there. I'm gonna actually go to the hit over to do my 3 markers, because I already have one here. So if I make one here, it's gonna make another one. I don't need to have another one. That one's just fine. And I'll have the spot I need. So I'm gonna determine if I need to go forward or back on this. Now, once you start to get out of bounds with this, like what's happening here, you'll see this red here. The computer doesn't really know how to deal with that, doesn't know how to quantize that, and you can hear what's happening. You get kind of like a nice little stutter. Let me see if I can solo this for you. That one's not so bad. Maybe if I do like that. It's not really doing what I wanted to do, but for the most part, you know, you don't want to have this red there. Your computer's not really handling that very well. So you gotta, again, be gentle with it. Got to find that balance of where you can move stuff and how much. So let's see here. So I know I'm a little bit off there. I also have a double marker here too, so I'm going to get rid of that marker. If I hold down Option and I click the bottom triangle that has my anchor there, I can get rid of that marker. So let's go ahead and try and move it over to the right just a little bit. So not bad. Let's check this against the click track just to see. So that section here that I was editing sounds like it's nice and in time right now. So didn't really do too much to it, just put those markers there and moved a few little things. So it's nice and tight now. So once I'm done with that, you gotta leave elastic audio on though. I can go back to waveform. Now I have all my analysis markers, my anchor points, all those are gone. It just looks like a regular piece of audio again, but I have to leave my elastic audio on, or else, you know, it'll ask me to either revert back to my changes, or sorry, from my changes, or it'll ask me to commit to those changes. Maybe I'm not ready to commit to those changes just yet. So I'm gonna leave that there. That's nice and fine. Let's see here. What else do we want to do with this track? So let's say that we didn't have a click track going. This was recorded, you know, with all the guys in the room. They need a click track. They're all just kind of feeding off each other. And you'll get a lot of stuff like that. People like to record that way still. It's not uncommon. So our grid mode is not really going to do anything for us. So we don't really need to be on the grid mode, with the exception of maybe if you still want to get some nice clean chops, you know, some even 4-bar chops to move stuff around, that's totally fine. But for the most part, you're not going to be doing stuff on the grid mode. You can still use these time options. That's totally fine. But maybe you want to use minutes and seconds now. So I'm going to do that same thing there. I'm just going to replace a section. I'm going to go back to the beginning of the song here. Or maybe I'll just go to this section. Same part, same pre-chorus kind of part thing, right? So I'm going to listen, and I'm going to try to find the downbeat of this. And that's where I'm going to start. I'm going to chop that section from the downbeat and just go ahead and use it kind of like a loop. I'm going to take that one section that I think is tight, and I'm going to replace another section within that that bigger section, that pre-chorus, with that first part that I chopped. And I'm going to do that using time instead of using the grid options, because they didn't have a click track. It doesn't matter. I can't use the grid right now unless I line it up to the grid. So again, gotta be a musician, gotta use your ears, find those downbeats. Okay. So right here, that's obviously the beginning of that part. I'm just gonna call it begin for right now because I know what I'm doing here. I know what that edit's for. 1, 2, 3, 2, 1. So I'm kind of counting in my head, or I'm counting a little bit out loud to stay with the feel of things. And maybe this is the spot I want to replace. So I have a nice symbol hit here to mark some color change, but maybe the color wasn't supposed to change, or maybe I'm not really signaling that something else is going to happen there. Maybe I just need the drummer to keep playing that same rhythm there with no change. So maybe that's the spot I'm going to hit. So I'm going to go ahead and make a marker there, listen to it again to make sure I really got my spot. It's right here. So end. I got my boundary here of stuff I want to change. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get tab the transient again, of course, get right on top of that hit, right on top of that kick drum hit, that downbeat. I'm going to separate that spot. Now what I want to do here is I want to try to get as close to that downbeat, or maybe a little bit off, as I possibly can with my chop. Maybe tab to transient might not be the right option because I will have to go ahead and extend it out. So maybe I'll just go ahead and try to find a little blank spot there. But either way works, because remember, we have the trim tool. We can extend or minimize that region as much as we need to later on. So I'm going to do my option click drag method. I'm going to drop it right there, just to try it out. Okay, so that spot kind of works. I want to take it a little bit further here. I think I'm going to do it with tab the transient to get right on the top of it. I'm going to try to be as specific as possible. Tab. Actually, let me undo that. Cut. Tab. I got a region here that starts right when the kick drum starts. Let's see. Let's get my timer again and do that. So remember, I'm going to unlink my timeline and selection, so that way my time is still up there. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do option click and drag again. I'm not going to use my spot mode this time, just to show you another way to do this. So notice, let me go back before I do that. We're going to be looking up here, start length, start end and length. So I'm going to try to match that time up as best as I possibly can. Just about there. A little bit over. So what I can do is I can zoom in a little bit more, and I should have a little bit more control over where this is going. Like so. So just another way to move your stuff around again. Right there. Let's see how that works. Okay, so it's not bad. Time-wise, it feels okay, but the edit is a little bit choppy. So we're going to go back to our trim tool in slip mode, our good old friend, and we're going to try to see what we can do about getting that to happen. Getting that to be a nice, clean edit. Still a little bit choppy that way. We can notice, or we noticed by our hi-hat track that we're cutting off that transient a little bit. So maybe if we pull it to the right side a little bit more, we get some more action going on there. Not bad, not bad. Let's see. Maybe we can get it even further. It's a little bit choppy there too. I'm gonna pull it a little bit farther. Maybe even go like this, like I did with the other track. or the other section, pull it out a little bit more. So that doesn't work because we know that we still have that that original or not hi-hat, but clap hat thing that was going on that we didn't want there. So it doesn't seem like we can get this as tight as we want to. However, we have some more tools inside our Pro Tools that can help us get that done. So one thing you can try, maybe in this case, the kick drum is a little bit too big for this spot. We can't pull it back anymore in order to get our hi-hat track extended out some more. So what we can do is we can go ahead and separate just this one spot. And if we go and right-click our trim tool, we can go to time stretch. You don't have to be in elastic audio for this. So what this is going to do is it's going to trim down this region as needed. So if we trim it down, it's going to shrink the time. It shouldn't affect the pitch as long as you're not being too drastic with it. If we pull it out, it's going to make it's going to extend the pitch. So now that I got that nice and small, move that over to the side a little bit. I'm going to switch back from trim or from time to regular trim. I try to pull that out a little bit. I'm going to try to pull out this waveform as much as I possibly can before I get that kick drum. Right there. Move this right on top of it. Of course, you're going to have to fade this. Zoom in real close. Get a nice crossfade. I could also, in that situation, I could right click and do snap to previous. Put it right on top of that if I want to do that. So you have a few options with that as well. And I'll listen to it again. It's a little bit harsh. The other edit might be better, but maybe we can make this one work. So I'm going to extend this out a little bit. So I don't know if you can hear, but I can hear that time is a little bit wonky. You can hear like it's bending a little bit. I don't really like that. I'm a stickler for that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go back to my time stretch, and I'm going to try to extend it a little bit more, so it's kind of closer to normal. Then go back to my regular trim tool. Not bad, not bad. You got kind of a big boom over here from those two regions, but we can still make that work. We still got a lot of room to move some stuff around. So maybe before we go to fade, maybe we try to grab and see if we can pull this out a little bit more. Doesn't look like we can. It looks like it's not really going to work the way we want it to. Otherwise, we might as well just done it the other way. Go ahead. So I'll live with the boom, and I'm going to go ahead and try to fade that and see if I can get that to be smoother. So again, Command F for fade. And hopefully you guys can see what I'm doing here with this fade menu here. I'm just going to move some stuff around a little bit. Still a bit jumpy. I'm not really digging that. So I'm going to go ahead and do some trial and error stuff, see how I can make this happen. Because maybe you might be in a situation where this is the only option. As we could already tell, the first thing we did, was a good way to go about doing that chop, without using the time stretch. But in some cases, you might have to use a time stretch because the hit that you're replacing is not going to fit the exact spot. So I'm going to go ahead and try to extend the fade a little bit. I'm going to pull more on the left side like I'm doing now. Let's try to get that fade to start a little bit sooner. Not bad, not bad. that. So I'm gonna back it up a little bit because you gotta hear it in context. You can't be right on top of it. You gotta hear it coming into the edit. So it could work depending on what's going on in the music. Nah, still a bit choppy. So maybe what we want to do in this situation, instead of using that downbeat, maybe we don't want to have him re-hit that that big crash there. Maybe that's what's going on with this. So what we can do is, let's undo our changes for a second. Pull that one back. So what we do is, instead of taking that downbeat, that big downbeat, we can go ahead and chop some stuff in the middle of that phrase. So that looks like a nice spot. That's nice and clean, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and do the same process. Tab the transient, separate, find the in point. Where do I want to stop this? Looks like that's still a good spot there. So now I'm going to do my same trick here. I'm going to go ahead and find my spot. 3 minutes, 4 seconds, 0.266. Okay, unlink. And I can zoom in, or I can use spot mode, whatever way works. In this case, I probably want to use spot mode because I don't want to have to do the band-aid trick where I'm pulling back the region. Now, for these kind of edits, sometimes I do like to have a separate set of tracks, so that way I can just drag them down to the tracks. Or what you can also do is, if we want to go back into playlist mode, got some blank space down there. With that blank space, grab my region, option click drag, right? Drag it down here. So now I have this spot that I am going to replace over here on my what I call endpoint on this new blank space, so that way I don't have to worry about pulling the region back to to do the band-aid effect, as I like to call it. I can now go ahead and right-click this. Let me actually go ahead and find my spot again first, because it looks like I might have lost it. So I'm going to go ahead and do my tab transient. So 3 minutes, 4 seconds. Got that. Blah, blah, blah. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my region here. I'm going to do spot mode. Or I'm going to do spot mode. Bring up my spot dialog. And I'm going to switch this spot to time, because it's in bars and beats. I'm going to switch it to time there. So minutes and seconds. Very different from Synthy time code. I know. 266. So now I got my region that I'm going to replace right under the spot where it's supposed to be. And what I can do is I can hold shift, drag up. I hold shift so it doesn't move, and it's replaced. And I don't have to worry about using my trim tool to pull anything back out. Voila. Pretty clean. Want to be safe though, so I'm going to go ahead and add my fade in there, just to be sure. Fade my back end. Don't want to do that one just yet, because that one's got some stuff there. That's got some dirt. You can see that it created a little blip there. You don't want that, so I'm going to pull that right side over a little bit, because I know there's a little bit more blank space there. Now I got my fade. Now I don't have that huge amount of audio that would have caused a nice little clip or disruptance in our groove. little bit farther back. Now, if I was for real doing this edit, for the record, I would be a little bit concerned about some of the time that's going on there. So I would probably want to go ahead and clean that up before I go ahead and do my copy paste. So I would go into Elastic Audio or Warp View, move some things around, or maybe even just chop from a different section, or whatever it may be. But for the most part, you can see here that we have a lot of options as far as editing audio goes. So there's really not too many excuses for why you can't get something done inside of Pro Tools. I mean, with these modern DAWs and digital technology, you're not worried about chopping tape. We have so much flexibility. We can make some stuff happen. Doesn't ever, make up for better performance. That's always going to be king. But, as an engineer, you're going to come across situations where you don't have the best takes. So you got to make something happen. Or maybe you need to be creative. You're remixing something, or your artist like, well, we played this way. It's not really all that great. You're kind of musical. Why don't you make something happen with it? We don't have the money. We don't have the budget to go back and re-record. You can always use your editing chops here, chop things up, move things around as you need to, rearrange parts, and make some great music that way. So we got a few things covered here today. We covered, the different grids a little bit, slip, grid, spot mode. Didn't talk about shuffle, didn't really come up here. Talked about our track view. So we got playlist view. Good to use when you're, going between takes. Good to use if you're moving stuff around, of course, and you have the option to solo different takes with playlists. We got our Elastic Audio, talked a little bit about that, talked about switching from samples to ticks and what mode you should be using. In this case, since we're talking about drums, we're talking about rhythm. And then, we got our time versus bars and beats. So remember, if you're editing something and you're not linking it up to the grid, which I wanted to talk about, we ran out of time here. But if you're editing something and it's not based on a click track, it's not based on the grid has no bearing on anything, you're going to use minutes and seconds for the most part. If you do have that click track, or if you do have something that's synced up to the grid, you can figure out the tempo. Bars and beats is going to be your best friend because everything will be nice and easy for you. So that's about it. Again, look out for the next hangout. We'll talk about some different stuff here. But enjoy the rest of your day, and call in if you guys have any questions. Remember, connect with us on social media, Facebook, Google Plus. If you don't have it, which you probably do, unless you're teamed up with somebody else watching this video. Definitely, Instagram. You guys can keep taking pictures of what you're doing in studio and post your work. Keep your SoundClouds up to date. Okay, take care.